Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the backstory. If you are new here, kindly hit that subscribe button and the notification bell down below so that you can be notified when we post a new video. Now, ladies and gentlemen, there is an intel that leaked to the media about the resignation of Professor Njuguna. Professor Njuguna is the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury and Economic Planning of Kenya. Apparently, Professor Njuguna presented his resignation letter to President William Ruto last December holiday, but President Ruto rejected his resignation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the question is, why did Njuguna resign? And why did President Ruto reject his resignation? Now, that story has been captured in Taifa Leo, that is today's Taifa Leo, where they have stated in the headline that Rais alikataa barua ya waziri kujiuzulu. Wameuliza swali, Rais alikataa barua ya waziri kujiuzulu? And then they've gone ahead to write that duru zimeeleza kuwa baadhi ya mawaziri katika serikali ya William Ruto wametamaushwa na hali ya kudorora kwa uchumi wa nchi, ambapo sasa wamepanga kujiuzulu. Ripoti zimeeleza baadhi yao hata wamewasilisha barua ya kujiuzulu kwa rais, ingawa amezikataa. It has gone ahead to say that kulingana na duru hizo, mwishoni mwa mwaka uliopita, Rais Ruto aliripotiwa kukataa barua za kujiuzulu kwa waziri wa fedha Professor Ndung'u. So, in that write-up, they're trying to tell us that President William Ruto rejected some of the resignation of some of his cabinet secretaries. And the most significant one is Professor Njuguna. So they've said here that Professor Njuguna claims that he has been sidelined in the implementation of some of the policies that are affecting his ministry. One of them was maybe the finance bill and the high taxations. These are things that directly affect his ministry as the cabinet secretary. So, in the general sense, some of the policies that are implemented are generated from the ministry, whereby professionals from that ministry would look at the prevailing economic situation, then come up with policies that they would present, and then some of them would be presented to the cabinet and then they are approved. But here is a case whereby some of the policies that are affecting his ministry, he says, come from State House and are implemented without their input. But when these policies have negative impacts on Kenyans, the blame goes to him as the cabinet secretary. You know, if you've been keenly watching the political developments in the country, then you'd remember that Professor Ndung'u at some point somehow told us about the real state of the economy. President Ruto was quoted some times back telling Kenyans that the economy had stabilized.
Na mimi nataka niwahakikishie ile mambo ilikuwa msukosuko ilikuwa hapo ya uchumi, sasa uchumi yetu tumedhibiti. Our economy is now stable. Naona watu wa magazeti hawaamini, lakini polepole watakuja kuamini. Hata unga hawakuamini itashuka chini, lakini wameanza kuzoea. So polepole tutazoeana tu tukienda mbele. Si namna hiyo? So nataka niwashukuru sana, nimefurahi kufika hapa.
Now that was President Ruto. Then some days later, I think the following day, when Professor Njuguna was meeting, was asked when he was meeting a cabinet committee, not a cabinet, but a parliamentary committee, he was asked about the status of the economy. He was very blunt and he told the Kenyans the current situation.
So in a sense, we are struggling just to be on the same position. By the way, I can tell you, we are even having trouble with salaries. We are clearing salaries with arrears. In fact, that's what I started looking at in the morning. I was even called by the governor in Nairobi County telling me that, look, I'm going to be impeached. What are we going to do? I have not given salaries. You can imagine it's a liquidity issue which is short term.
Please share the truth before time catches up with you. Share the truth. Say, kimeumana. Give me time, kidogo. You will be able to sort out the problem.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, from that video, there are some of the highlights that we can get is that the Treasury says that the country is facing serious cash flow challenges due to the maturing debts that have delayed disbursement of funds to various development projects. And the CS has also told the Finance and Planning Committee that the country is facing a lot of financial difficulties, and we're in a very difficult financial situation as a country because of the depreciating shilling and the high interest rates. So during that time, he was asked why the country was unable to disburse funds to CDF, was unable to disburse funds for free primary education and all that. And he was very blunt. I like what he said. I like what he told the parliamentary committee, that we are facing pressures like high cost of living and high taxations. And some of these are brought about by the high cost of fuel and some policies that are not favorable to the country, to the economy. But if you compare what he told the parliamentary committee and what President Ruto told Kenyans while he was in Nyeri, those are two conflicting statements. So whom would you believe among the two? Because this is Njuguna, who is running the treasury, the CS treasury and economic planning of the country. And then there is President Ruto, who was kind of giving a political statement to please Kenyans. So this could be the main issue that is really affecting Professor Njuguna. And this is an issue that I think is affecting so many ministries. It's only that some of the ministers or some of the cabinet secretaries are not bold enough to come out and tell Kenyans the true picture. Because take, for example, there was an issue about, there have been a lot of diplomatic blunders made by prominent people or political leaders in Kenya. But if you look at some of them, you find that some of these blunders were kind of very cheap, that should have not been made by senior government officials. Look at us being sued by Uganda because of the issues to do with oil importation and all that. Look at our diplomatic tiff with Tanzania. There are some things that should be handled at a diplomatic level. We don't need to get to a point whereby Uganda is going to court to sue Kenya. That is something that should have been. But there is that, I think there is that fear within the civil service, because this is a new regime. You don't know whose toes you're going to step on before you make any decision. And then it's like the ministries, all the civil servants within those ministries have not been empowered to make decisions. They have to wait for communication from the higher office before they make such decisions. But, you know, we are in a system that if you compare with the previous systems, let's start from Kibaki, then Uhuru, then now William Ruto's presidency. During Kibaki, and I think that interview was conducted on Citizen TV, we are told that Kibaki empowered his ministers, said that you are able to make independent decisions within that ministry, and you are held accountable. Should anything happen within that ministry, you are held accountable. if there was something that needed the president's input, that is when you make a call. You'd call the president and he would respond appropriately. Cabinet ministers were empowered. Then came President Uhuru's cabinet. Uhuru also tried as much in his second term to get professionals, those who understood the running, the nitty-gritties, the running of ministries. So he even poached some professionals from the private sector to come and help him run his government. Look at the professionals that he had in that cabinet, in his cabinet. Professor Magoa, Professor Magoa, you had Matiang'i, serious heads, serious people with serious educational backgrounds. Some people who could give a lot of input in the running of the government. Compare with the current cabinet that we have in Kenya. I don't want to name names, but I think you know the kind of cabinet that we have. So just imagine the kind of discussions that they have during cabinet meetings. So on top of this, look at a situation whereby there is no input of cabinet secretaries within their ministries. And then you get orders from above and you're told to implement. When things get hot within that ministry, you're the one who is going to be blamed. And that is why Professor Njuguna felt that he didn't want to take all the blame and thought it was time for him to let go. But why did President Ruto reject? That is the main question. You know, we are in some kind of political and economic mess. And President Ruto has come out to tell Kenyans that he knows what he's doing and is taking Kenya to Canaan, in quotes. And in all his statements, if you've been keen enough, President Ruto has been talking about him, not his government. He's always excluded the cabinet in his statements. It's about him. I have done this, I have done that, I have done. So at no time has he mentioned his government or his cabinet. So he wants to take he wants to take credit for success of in case his government succeeds. He doesn't want to attribute success to any other individual within that government. But is he willing to take responsibility for failure? That is now where the question is. Is he willing to take responsibility for failure? Because at the end of the day, if there is failure, when these cabinet secretaries go to press, when they are asked questions about their ministries and they need to have answers. So if they don't give satisfactory answers, then the blame goes to them. So Ndung'u is kind of trying to tell Kenyans in a way that we are not in a very safe situation economically as being portrayed by politicians. And maybe he's tried so much to come up with policies that can salvage the country, but these are being rejected. And then President Ruto also doesn't want to be seen as a weak president. You know, in Kenya, no cabinet secretary has ever resigned. Look at all the cabinet secretaries who are involved in corruption, who are involved in all those scandals. No one has ever resigned. Take, for example, the former cabinet secretary for Treasury, who at one point said that he would rather die than resign. So here is a bold guy in the name of Professor Njuguna who wants to resign. And by resigning, he would have taken credit. He would have been kind of praised by Kenyans for being the first person to take that bold step. So his the resignation would have dented President Ruto's image politically. So President Ruto gave him time to first cool down, and then maybe at the appropriate time come up with a reshuffle. And during that reshuffle, he will tell Kenyans that he fired Professor Njuguna because he failed to implement some of the policies, or he failed to come up with policies that could rescue the economy of this country. So he would take credit for firing him. Just remember that there was a time that President Ruto told Kenyans about the resignation of the former IG. Then later, at some point, he came out and told Kenyans that he had fired him. So politically, that would speak to the hearts of the common man that he is a strong man who can make decisions to fire cabinet secretaries. But if Ndung'u had succeeded in resigning, then that would have dented President Ruto's image politically. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are still going to follow up on this story and stay here to be updated. We'll keep you updated whenever new stories develop. But for today, that is it from us. Until next time, goodbye.